Assalamualaikum, selamat sejahtera to all Malaysians and a very warm welcome to all our attendees from all over the world. Thank you for your interest and thank you for joining us. This is the MIHAS Knowledge Hub and we are very glad to host all of you here today from so many countries. We have put together a lineup of distinguished experts as we start conversations and connections across multiple sectors and disciplines on key drivers of the halal economy and export opportunities moving forward. We hope the sessions inspire new business ideas and bring real development and immediate activation. Our next session is the second plenary session on trending topics, which examines current scenarios, opportunities and technologies that are likely to be part of the new normal. It is now my pleasure and honour to introduce the moderator for the session, Mr. Madzlan Mohamad Hussain, Senior Partner at CSQ Law. Madzlan will be introducing the very distinguished panel of speakers and leading the session on Islamic financing for global markets, where we look at Islamic trade finance, the prospects and challenges post-COVID. Over to you, Madzlan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And a very good morning to all of you. First of all, let me thank Matrade and MIHAS Showcase for having us on the panel to speak to this esteemed audience on the topic of Islamic finance for the global market. I have with me three prominent figures from the Islamic finance industry who will be speaking to us and sharing their experience, their knowledge and information on how Islamic finance will continue to support the development of trade and economies throughout this global pandemic. And hopefully, inshallah, we will be able to also listen to a lot of insights on how businesses and small, medium and micro enterprises will be able to obtain support from Islamic finance industry to sustain their businesses during this global pandemic. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for sharing this session with me. I have firstly Mr. Zubair Mughal from AlHuda CIBE from Pakistan. Welcome, Zubair.
Thank you very much.
I also have Mr. Usman Ghouse from an Islamic bank in Malaysia, CIMB Islamic. Welcome, Usman.
Thank you very much for having me here.
And my third panelist is Mr. Bilal Parvaiz, who is from Standard Chartered Saadiq, one of the international banks which has its Islamic banking arm operating primarily in Malaysia and Middle East. Welcome, Bilal.
Thank you, and Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you and pleasure to be on this panel.
Gentlemen, hopefully through this session, we will be able to share with the audience for the next hour on some of your insights regarding the development of the Islamic finance industry, as well as what's been in place for the past recent years, so that our audience will be able to gauge how Islamic finance will be able to support their business and help them to grow, help them to sustain, especially during this very challenging economic climate due to the global pandemic, COVID-19. If I may immediately start the ball rolling, I would like to pass my first question to Mr. Bilal Parvaiz from Standard Chartered Saadiq. Bilal, can you share with us your thoughts and updates on the international Islamic banking scene, what is actually happening in the other markets, especially markets which Stanchart Saadiq has a presence, for example, Middle East and Africa. Perhaps you can also cover, for instance, what is happening in the global sukuk market, since sukuk is one of the most popular instruments for the Islamic finance industry. And taking into consideration the current developments with regard to the pandemic, what are your perspectives on the economic outlook in relation to the global Islamic finance industry, say, for the next 6 to 12 months? Please, Bilal.
Thank you, Anchik Madzlan. Very interesting and yet insightful question. So let me just break it into a few pieces, right? So you've asked about the international Islamic banking scene in terms of the capital markets, and then how the Islamic banks are reacting to the pandemic. So a couple of things I can pick up. So first of all, everyone is pretty much aware COVID-19 has had an unprecedented impact on the overall financial system, and it has tested the resilience of all the markets, and not just the Islamic banking system, but the overall economy as well. And while there has been demand on the Sharia compliant solutions, which has been driving the Islamic banking industry, the growing Muslim population has been on the back of the increasing horizon of Islamic products into various markets. But having said that, in the last couple of years, we have all been experienced a very challenging time, which has sort of moved the industry into new directions, and it has sort of catalyzed various new initiatives which we now see as appearing in the market, in the market, which I'll speak about. Now, if you look at the overall economy, IMF expects 6.1% growth in 2021 and about 4% in 2022. And this is primarily on back of the stimulus packages which have been rolled out by various governments and the central banks to spur the recovery. So these are and consequently, it will also impact and trickle down onto the Islamic banking and the Islamic financial sector as well in various markets. If we speak about Malaysia itself, we were just discussing this prior to the start of the session, that the support provided by the government at the macro level has been tremendous. So I was reading it a while back that the percentage of the support packages vis-a-vis GDP, which Malaysia has done, ranks number 3 in the world. So that's the amount of contribution or the support that the government has provided to the economy over the last 2 years, ranging from all sectors, from SMEs to the other sectors as well. So those are some of the factors which we will see as contributing to the recovery, and Islamic banking will be a part of it. Now, coming to Sukuk, Sukuk has been the flagship Islamic product, starting with Middle East and Asia, and now Malaysia is taking the lead. Malaysia is the largest issuer of Sukuk for any market globally. Recently, we have also seen the Central Asian republics gaining interest in Islamic banking, where I think Mr. Zubair is also present right now, and also the African market. So Africa is a nascent market vis-a-vis Islamic banking, and what we are seeing, and Standard Chartered being an international Islamic bank, we are operating in all these markets. So Asia, Africa, and the Middle East being our footprint. So from an Africa perspective, we have seen a Islamic ECA come into play, right? So there's Islamic transaction backed by ECA, so which is the credit insurance providers, which are mostly sovereigns or quasi-sovereigns. That's something which is quite new, because if you go back 5 years into the history, you wouldn't see ECAs pretty much compatible with Islamic solutions, and that's not the case now. So what is happening is that the acceptability of Islamic solutions, acceptability of Murabaha, Ijara in the market is growing, and that is what is bringing scale to the Islamic banking products and services across to newer markets. And also, one more important element is the standardization which the Islamic industry has brought in. So again, if you go back 5-7 years, you would see some inconsistencies between Asia and Middle East. I am not saying that they are not there anymore, but I think a lot of those had a lot of convergence has come in through various through efforts by all the players, and also the international banks who are operating in both these markets, because they sort of help tie in, all the various markets together to sort of go ahead with the unified approach. So these are some of the things which have helped the industry gain the scale where it is now. When we talk about 2021 and beyond, 5 pillars which I think will be driving the Islamic economy. Number one is the Islamic fintech ecosystem, which we now see increasingly coming up. Secondly is the digitization of the banks. So with the digitization coming in, we are now seeing Islamic digital banks come into play. Thirdly is the tokenization of sukuks, which means that now sukuks are accessible to the retail investors. And the issuance last year in Malaysia was one of the examples of how retail investors can go on to support the sukuk issuance, to invest in the sukuks. And fourth is the Islamic social finance and sustainability. So ESG and sustainability, which itself is a huge topic and aligns very well with the Islamic banking principles, the Maqasid Sharia. So that I think the increasing focus of all the players on sustainable finance, on sustainability initiatives, also elevates the importance of Islamic banking, because that's Islamic finance being closely aligned to the Sharia principles and the objectives of sustainability, which is to create economic, social prosperity and sustainability in the overall economic system, gels in very well with what Islamic finance wants to achieve as its ultimate outcome. And lastly is the halal economy, the growing halal economy, and the supporting ecosystem, and the play and the regulations, and I would say the indirect interventions which are happening in various markets to put frameworks around halal businesses, that will also support the Islamic banking. Because when you talk about the halal economy, Islamic banks are the connecting pillar. So if you take example of a halal company which wants to grow its business, or which wants to do trading, or which wants to grow its footprint, whether capex, working capital, anything, Islamic banks come in. And not just this, Islamic banks have gone a step ahead. We are now even helping companies getting halal certification, providing advisory, consultancy, business matching. So connecting them into various markets, leveraging on our footprint. So that's something which Islamic banks have started. Standard is doing it, CIMB is doing it. There are other banks who are doing it. So that's where the industry is collectively moving. One important thing which I would also want to mention is the Islamic wealth management. That has, if you look at based on our own experience from Standard Chartered perspective, the demand for Sharia compliant wealth management, Sharia ESG linked wealth investments is growing exponentially. And why is it there? Because first of all, it has the ESG element, so that ticks one box. Second is the opportunity to purify your income when you go for a Sharia wealth management offering, because you have the concept of zakat, you have the concept of waqf or sadaqah that you can route as a percentage of your income, etc., which is something which is not readily available in the conventional offerings. So these are value adds and differentiators of the Islamic products. I think we have moved way ahead, and I think Usman and Zubair would also probably vouch this, that there was a time when Islamic bankers, we were all scrambling to get a product out which mirrors a conventional product. I think that time has passed. Islamic banking has reached that scale where Islamic finance is creating its own value addition and its own differentiation by moving into social finance, by moving into halal economy, by moving into channeling the sadaqah, the zakat, and the donations into supporting that to reach the right people, to support the lifting participation, which is to help the underserved, the communities which are not being served. So these are all social and sustainability linked initiatives which the banks have taken. Standard launched a women program last year called Vaunita. So that was a program which is supporting those companies which have a majority women shareholdership. So that's also just one of the example, and there are many in the market out there on how the banks have scaled up, and now they are jointly taking the Islamic banking to a new industry. So my outlook for Islamic banking remains positive on back of the fundamentals I've spoken about, and also the growth that we are expecting with the increased vaccination and the pandemic sort of moving into an endemic, and we are all now ready living in the new normal. So that's where I see it. And Madzlan, thank you, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Bilal, for a very lengthy and comprehensive overview of the role taken by Islamic finance industry, not only in supporting the economy generally, but also in terms of providing innovative solutions to the businesses around the world during these challenging times. I am very, very impressed by the optimism and the positive outlook that you have highlighted, because it definitely shows that notwithstanding some of the gloomy aspects of the global pandemic, at the same time, there are also pockets of opportunities and new areas that actually the banking sector have been exploring together with the other players in the economy. And therefore, I think hopefully this would send a right message, positive message to the audience, our audience in this session, about what they can look forward to, especially to survive this economic condition for the next 6 months to 1 year. Now I would like to move to Usman from CIMB Islamic. Usman, following from the broad perspective that have been presented by Bilal, which is quite deep and broad in terms of the coverage, can you also share some of your thoughts and updates on the development of the Islamic banking industry, especially in Malaysia and throughout the ASEAN region where CIMB has a presence? Especially, I would like to acknowledge that CIMB Islamic, from your own experience regionally, would it be safe to say that the regional economies situation can be considered as very similar to the rest of the other markets, or are they rather distinguished? And again, what are your perspective on the economic outlook in relation to Islamic banking industry in the Southeast Asia region for the next 6 to 12 months? Please, Usman.
Thank you so much for asking that question, actually. From a ASEAN and a South Asia point of view, I think if you look at the latest reports that's been come out, they're looking at about a 4% growth within this particular region. But the reality is, towards the end of the year, we are seeing slumpiness of growth. However, that is still growth at about 4% to 4.4%, and that's what we're expecting. And that's a good thing for Islamic finance. I mean, look at Malaysia as one of the larger players in the region. We are already 40% of our asset book is on an Islamic finance portfolio basis. And Malaysia is in its perfect position, given that it's the third largest Islamic banking market in the world. So I think from an Islamic finance point of view, absolutely the trajectory is only upwards and not certainly downwards. And the good thing about this is, from an economic point of view, in the post-COVID era, is slumpish a bit, in the sense that you have inclining industries and declining industries. Some of those inclining industries, I think banks need to really facilitate, is on the health side of things, e-commerce. More importantly, food and security. I can't stretch how important food and security is, and that's become very prevalent during the pandemic. If you look at the 2019, the grocery little runs that we all were doing, and out of toilet paper and soap, So that's a key industry that's coming up. And last but not least, and we spoke about this before this, when we were chit-chatting, is logistics as a whole. And we realize how important it is to have that connectivity, virtual connectivity as well during this pandemic. And I think the way forward from an economic point of view, and these are certain sectors that we definitely need to focus on. Having said that, we also need to manage and really build up the declining industries such as your tourism. Remember, South Asia as an economy, it is very tourism centric. If you look at even Malaysia to some extent, Indonesia to some extent, Thailand to some extent, Vietnam, they have a large element of GDP support from the tourism industry. And I think that needs a lot of support. And that's where I think banks like CIMB, Standard Chartered, and other banks in the region need to play a very important role. Having said that, government within our own country here in Malaysia and the ASEAN region are helping these industries. So the economic outlook on an ASEAN point of view, I personally believe it's an upward trend in the sense that focus on the right sectors, the right products, and the right solutions to the right clients is extremely important. If we have certain economic sector that is falling, we need to proactively manage the declining, whether it's through fiscal or other monetary intervention within the respective governments. And that is just from an outlook point of view. But if you further deep dive into the outlook, you will see, regardless of industry, there is short-term liquidity needs. As you're moving out of the pandemic, you need to start supplying and producing. And that requires a lot of short-term liquidity. I'm not talking fixed asset liquidity. I'm talking short-term working capital support. And that's where I think there's no other place, and places like MIHAS, where they're kind of driving the boosting of trade finance within countries and regions. And that's where I think banks need to, again, intervene more holistically on that side of things. And of course, halal is a key distinctive composition in the sense that halal as an industry is something that Malaysia thrives within Indonesia. And just to give you a bit of information, 25% of all trade that goes out of Malaysia is to ASEAN. So therefore, ASEAN is a very key geographical region that Malaysia should focus on. And halal, believe it or not, is one of the primary drivers for that growth. So how can banks really help this economy and help really thrive this economy within the region? And I think Bilal said it really well, digital. If you look at digital connectivity from your basic banking account to be able to transact and transfer monies and solutions to multiple regions is something that banks need to start facilitating. And I think it's commendable with the central bank support that we are able to do that in the span of the last 18 months. But working capital requirements still is there. So you're going to see a bit of slumpishness at the beginning. However, that's going to be a quick hockey stick curve to go, because once you pass through the first rotors, I think it'll be much easier in the sense of really getting the ball moving in ASEAN. But I also want to add one point, ASEAN from a ESG center, which is economic, social, and governance initiatives within multiple banks across the region and multiple client needs, is something that I think banks are starting to move forward with, and that's very important in the sense that how do we build our own client segments within Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Cambodia, to really start thinking the lines of that so that they could meet global demands. Because ASEAN, if you look at ASEAN as a region, they're also largely doing exports as well, whilst importing as well. But if you look at your export market is going through very much towards the sustainable trade financing piece, sustainable supply chain financing, sustainable value chain financing, all different lingos, but means to achieve the same thing. And I think that's where, again, from an economic outlook point of view, that is the space that we need to watch very carefully and do just right. To go away from the optics and really start getting our companies, our governments ready for it. I think that's something that Malaysia is doing a really fantastic job on. And I can see within the markets we operate, Indonesia, Thailand, Singapore, Cambodia, they're all really, from a regulatory angle, is supporting this. And again, if that's no support, then there's no other way to grow that economy. And we're seeing that trajectory in the recent couple of months. Just one quick point, or the last point I want to add on the economic outlook from a banking and finance point of view. Absolutely, it's definitely upwards. Very optimistic about it, given the fact that as new products come out, new digital solutions come out, there's a natural need, I would say a humanistic need, to really get on board with that so that other businesses within the region keep up with time. I bet you 15 years ago, when we looked at completely online logistic tracking was something an anomaly. Today, it is the most common factor, whether if you're buying things domestically. So that trajectory of evolving is already happening very fast here in Malaysia, and we're seeing this happen in countries like Indonesia and Thailand even faster, right? So that's a really good economic space that we need to look out for, especially on the digital side of things. That does not mean, and I want to be very clear, is that doesn't mean we start a tech company. I'm saying what we need to do is with our existing products and solutions, whether it's a SME, whether it's a mid-corp or a large corp, we start looking at digital channels to reach out to more customers. Banks need to also make it easy digitally for customers to be facilitated with financing. I think that's the trajectory we're going for, and I think that's where the growth sector is. So that's pretty much what I have to say from my economic outlook point of view. And I can't wait for 2022 because I think that it's about time we saw quick rollout in terms of driving this forward.
Right. Thank you very much, Usman. That was very insightful. I particularly like two keywords, two buzzwords that you mentioned just now, i.e., firstly, interconnectivity. I think somehow because of the pandemic, because of the lockdowns, people are staying at their homes. They underestimated how actually they remain interconnected with the outside world simply through their mobile phones. Because of the technology capabilities that we have today compared to maybe just 2-3 years ago, especially with the broadband infrastructures in place, with the affordability of smartphones, even kids are using them, for education at home. So actually, to a certain extent, and due to substantial improvement in technology, actually, we have become more interconnected as an economy, even regionally, I would say. Not just in Malaysia, but throughout the Southeast Asia region. As you mentioned, the largest trading partners for Malaysia is actually the Southeast Asia region neighbors, including Singapore, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, and the rest. So I hope that our audience will be able to revisit some of the points that you have highlighted and simultaneously consider some of the propositions that have been pointed out by you and Bilal, because I can see from both your presentations, your explanation, banks remain very committed to support the sustainability of the businesses, of the economies, and especially Islamic banks, you want to be genuine partners to SMEs and businesses for them to continue to grow, notwithstanding whatever challenges that are ahead. Zubair, therefore, I would like to bring you into the discussion by highlighting and trying to deduce from you, since you have done a lot of work on Halal framework, Halal advocacy, and of course regional work as well, your work throughout Central Asia, Africa region, in many Islamic economies are well documented. So from a thought leadership and research and policy perspective, what is your assessment of the role that is played and can be played by Islamic banking industry, especially as to what many stakeholders will be expecting, i.e. to be the strategic partner to the halal industry, halal SMEs? Do you observe that positive trend is taking place, whereby closer cooperation and collaboration between the banking industry and halal industry happening? Or is there sufficient basis also to anticipate that both the Islamic banking industry and the halal industry are going to grow together in a synergistic manner, side by side, in the next 6 to 12 months? What do you think? Or is it far from reality? Please, Zubair.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much, Madzlan, for the question. And I would like to thank to MIHAS as well to include me in this imminent panel discussion. And I'm also appreciate to Mr. Bilal and Mr. Usman, whatever they spoke about the development of Islamic finance industry. So as per your question, yes, Islamic finance and halal industry are basically have an integral part. If we see the global size of the halal industry, which is about $4.1 trillion, one of the major share belong to the halal industry is Islamic finance, which is about $2.9 trillion. So what we believe that Islamic finance can play a very vital role for the development of the halal industry. And in some countries, including in Pakistan, including in Bangladesh and many other countries, whenever any halal certification interest and company want to certify any halal industry, they also look forward that what is their source of finance, what is their source of insurance, either that is halal or haram. If that is the conventional insurance, in our audit report, we recommend them go for the kafir instead of insurance, go for the Islamic banking instead of the conventional finance. So when this is being emerging all over the world, that the source of finance for the halal certified product should be on the basis of Sharia, then I believe that halal industry also grow along with the Islamic finance industry. And by the way, we also need to have some dedicated product for the halal industry. For example, in Sakuk, there are many types of Sakuk, social Sakuk, Sakuk for healthcare, green Sakuk, and many other types of the Sakuk. But we should have some dedicated Sakuk for the halal industry, for the development of the halal industrial park, for the development of the halal tourism, for the development of halal logistics, and etc. So we should also think that there is the need to have a dedicated Islamic financial product for the halal industry. We should have some dedicated takaful product for the halal industry, and as well as we should have some dedicated Islamic banking product to grow SME level for the halal industry. Because we believe that Islamic finance industry have a very good product, especially in the banking industry, but in some areas related to the halal industry, they are lagging behind. And right now, after the pandemic, we learned, during the pandemic, we learned a lesson that technology is playing a vital role, which is also mentioned by you a short while ago. So we should, yes, we have fintech, Islamic fintech, insurtech, regtech, health tech, etc. So we should have halal tech as well. The application, the technological application who can facilitate the halal industry at SME level, at retail level, and other industrial level as well. And I believe that technology, especially the blockchain technology, will play a vital role for halal industry, for the validation of the halal certification process. Basically, the blockchain can play a vital role for the concept of farm to fork. So all the validation that from where that product is grown, where that is processed, where is the value added over there, how they packed, what is the logistic, and how to that reach to the shelf of any supermarket. So I think so the technology along with the Islamic finance will play a very good role for the halal industry. And if we see that's the global spectrum of the halal industry, what I believe that for East Asia, including Malaysia, Indonesia, they did a lot of work. And then in Middle East, including in Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and Southeast Asian country and Middle Eastern country also have a very good work. But unfortunately, we are lagging behind in Africa. In Africa, Africa is the continent of 54 countries. About 49% African population is Muslim. But unfortunately, the halal infrastructure in African continent is very low. Similarly, in Central Asia, where the Muslim population is more than 90%, we need to do something for those markets. And If you see, for example, in Islamic finance again, there are many international bodies who are promoting Islamic finance, like IFSP or OFI and many others. And a couple of them are Malaysian based as well. But at the global level, we do not see any global body who is only dedicated for the halal industry. For example, if we see OIC have a different bodies like CIMIC, CISRIC, Islamic Development Bank, trade body, etc. But we didn't see any dedicated body for the halal industry, which is $4.1 trillion industry. So if we have any global body which is dedicated to development of the trade, yes, under OIC we have a CIMIC. CIMIC have a very good mandate to design the standards for the halal industry, but we need a body who also look after the trading aspects, who also look after their financing aspect, who also look after to design the multinational or international strategies for the development of halal industry. Yes, please.
Thank you very much, Zubair. That was very useful information. I especially like that you pointed out while the global halal industry is very sizable, around the size of $1 trillion, but at the same time, there are many issues that are still underdeveloped, under promoted, which therefore requires some effort amongst all the stakeholders in the halal industry, so that we can unlock values. I think the use of technology would be quite important.
Yes.
Expediting that value proposition process, and hopefully your point just now will be well received by many of the audience out here, to consider the markets that you mentioned, the underdeveloped markets, especially Central Asia and Africa, for the simple reason that they do have substantial population of Muslims, and their infrastructure still requires a lot of improvement for halal industry, and hopefully from there we can grow together, especially to benefit from the advancement of technology. Now, I would like to come back to Bilal. Bilal, it goes without saying that the pandemic has affected many economies, and most are still struggling, to overcome all sorts of challenges. What are your thoughts about the tools that can assist these businesses, especially the SMEs, to find solutions to strengthen their resilience amidst these uncertainties? Perhaps you can also share whether in Stanchart Saadiq's own approach, own methods, there has been anything that you do differently during this pandemic to overcome imminent challenges and therefore assist your customers. Please, Bilal.
Thank you, Enchik Madzlan. I think a very important question, given the importance and the impact of SMEs on the Malaysian economy. So first, a few figures before I sort of zoom into how Stanchart Saadiq is supporting this very, very important and critical segment for the Malaysian economy. So the SMEs in Malaysia contribute to the 36% of the GDP and 50% of employment. So this actually puts the context right, that the SMEs collectively, 50% of the employment is coming from the SMEs, and 36% of GDP. That's like a very, very substantial impact and a number. And that also speaks of the opportunity there and the impact which would be, which you would see if the SME segment is not supported adequately, especially during the pandemic. Because what the pandemic has done is that it has exposed the vulnerable sectors, or those sectors which were not, ready or had adopted onto the new themes such as digitization, such as supply chain linkages, etc. So all those weaknesses sort of got exposed during the pandemic, because the ecosystem had not been put up in a robust manner, or was in sort of a transition, and nobody had, it was unprecedented. Nobody had expected that we would be entering into such a zone and such a situation.
Yeah.
Now, coming to SMEs, I think from a Malaysia perspective, SMEs are the most impacted, and within the private sector, I think that's where we see a lot of we have seen a lot of challenges and struggles come into play. The smaller firms did not only had impact on their local business, but also on the exports, because of the disruption in the supply chains. All the the big markets and the big economies, they looked at securing what they could buy locally first, because nobody was sure that whether the logistic supply chain would be able to maintain or sustain. And at times, owing to the medical emergencies or the impact of the pandemic, the companies were simply not able to operate and meet their the suppliers' requirements. So the varying nature of challenges resulted in the impact. But if I would say on a holistic level, at a macro level, the way the government of Malaysia and also the regulator, the banking industry, and especially the Islamic banks, I think all the players in the ecosystem have sort of joined hands and at their level best tried and are still continuing to support the SMEs. So the total size of packages and the funding which the government provided just for the SME is about 147 billion ringgits. That's somewhere near for 35 to 40 billion dollars. That's a substantial amount which was channeled down onto the SMEs to help them sustain this. Secondly, there were special grants for SMEs to adapt to digitization. So for companies to adapt to digitization, to get the necessary platform and the equipment, etc. So those grants are also provided by the government. Bank Negara moratorium scheme, which required the banks, including the Islamic banks, to provide facilitation to individuals and SMEs during the pandemic, was also something which was very important, and all the banks, I think, stood up to it. Islamic banks especially took one step ahead, where we agreed not to compound any of the profits for that period. So now coming on to what Standard Chartered has done, I think when we look at the landscape of the SMEs, and Standard Chartered is the oldest and the first bank in Malaysia. So with our international experience and with our local knowledge and history of being in Malaysia for more than 146 years, I think it puts us into a very unique position, because what we can do is we can bring in our international expertise, our knowledge from the other markets, and see that what are the best practices and cross-fertilize those. So looking at that, the most important thing I think that we saw is that apart from the financial support that we provided, was the adaptation to digitization. So what we did was that we rolled out schemes where the companies were able to enroll to our straight to bank, which is our in-house platform, without any charges. So we waived all the charges for them to sign up, to train them for SMEs to be ready, to be agile, to be adaptive. And once you have access to digital platforms, all trade finance, all cash management services, etc., can be done on a remote basis. You don't need to be handling physical exchange at the bank counter, etc. So that's one of the things that we did. Apart from it, because the pandemic struck all the markets where it was, and from our own responsibility and a perspective of to give back to the community, right? To give back to the people in the society that we serve. What we did was that we rolled out $1 billion of COVID-19 support fund, which was rolled out globally, also available in Malaysia, and there are a few companies who took it. And that funding is provided to all the companies without any profit. So what we do is that the financing is given on a cost basis to any company which is linked to the fight against the pandemic, which can be PPE, which can be even oxygen tanks, vaccines, etc., etc. So that's also one of the initiatives that we took. And lastly, during for the SMEs, if you look at the data for last year, the Halal SMEs also being part of the overall ecosystem also were in the same bandwagon. Actually, the Malaysian exports for the last year are at about $32 billion, and in 2019 they were at about $40 billion. So the impact on the supply chains, the impact on the overall economic, the size of the economy was also seen by the halal SMEs, and that's where we work very closely with HDC. And I think, as Usman also mentioned, a platform like MIHAS is the right thing to catalyze, the companies, to get them to talk to each other, to create those business matching opportunities. And the Islamic banks come in at this stage, and they facilitate this engagement, right? Because any facilitation, any trade has to be supported through a financial channel, and that's where the Islamic banks come in. One last point is on supply chains. So supply chain and supply financing, that's something which we saw at a government level from programs like Parentes to Jana Niaga, even Skim Chakna. But what we have also done it at our level is, because obviously as a bank which is supporting a lot of multinational companies in Malaysia and outside, we have a lot of companies whom we bank outside Malaysia, but they have SME suppliers in Malaysia. So they have suppliers in Malaysia, and how do we go and support them? So there are what we can offer, and what we have actually implemented is our Islamic supply chain programs, because some of the either the buyer is looking for an Islamic solution, or the seller here wants a Sharia solution, which cuts across various markets. So a solution that we put up very recently for a multinational, where the suppliers are in Malaysia, the goods are being brought into Saudi Arabia, and that's all being done through a digital platform. So there's no documentation involved, etc., and all the transactions are being done, and it supports the SME in Malaysia because they get early liquidity, early access to financing at extremely competitive pricing. So you have to be innovative, you have to be adaptive, and you have to be agile, and that's what brings you resilience to get through these kind of storms. And and I think you also mentioned that every challenge is also an opportunity to do better and to improvise, and that also sort of prepares you for the next challenge, which is unknown right now. So that's how we see it, and that's how we continue to operate. Thank you.
Thank you, Bilal, because you particularly highlighted and made me realize as well how MIHAS is a very good platform for the congregation of the business community, including the banks and their customers, whereby whether we like it or not, during the pandemic, because of the lockdowns and whatnot, usually people would have a feeling of loneliness, especially amongst businesses, as if there were no support system at all for them to survive. But as you have perfectly pointed out, when SMEs actually reach out for help, for assistance, actually there are plenty of support available out there, including the $1 billion that you mentioned. That is a non-profit based provided by the banking institution, just to help their customers stay afloat and therefore overcome their challenges. So I would like to on record thanks Tanchat Saadiq for that support, that assistance to the SMEs and the economy, and hopefully it would benefit a long way in terms of helping them to sustain themselves and overcome their challenges. Osman, now I would like to pass a similar question to you, in case you have anything to add about the tools that are used by CIMB Islamic, especially regionally, to find solutions to strengthen their resilience. Perhaps you can also share the things that CIMB particularly did yourself in terms of how you change your methods, your approaches in running businesses. Perhaps some of these ideas would benefit the audience in understanding the creativeness that are needed, innovations that are needed to overcome some of their own challenges. Please, Usman.
Yeah, thank you again. First, I think it's good to acknowledge, and like Bilal mentioned, the lot of effort, or the immense effort rendered by the Malaysian government in terms of really supporting the SMEs within Malaysia in these very trying times, lockdown, no lockdown. I'm sure it was frustrating, and for the government, it was even more frustrating for the SMEs that we live in, or in the communities that we live in. And I think a lot of support has been gotten, and that's why the ship has not sunk yet in Malaysia. And that's why there's a bit of hope on this front. Having said that, there's been a lot of natural adaptation that banks such as CIMB had to go through, given our size and the importance that we play in a market like Malaysia, being the second largest bank. We have to pivot. We have to pivot and pivot fast. And so some of the things that we are looking at right now, if the organizers can quickly share my slide on screen, that will be really great. Please. Perfect. So a couple of things that CIMB is really looking at on this front is as follows. And I want to talk about a couple of propositions that we were really kind of advancing on to objectively to really help businesses to expand and be able to garner new businesses across markets, or as follows. The first one is a proposition called Halal Biz Ready. And Halal Biz Ready is something CIMB has looked at in 2019. So we were the pioneer to start the Halal corridor in 2018 in Malaysia. And that's why it's a natural fit with MIHAS. And we've always been a part of this because it really spurs growth on this sector. So what really is Halal Biz Ready for an SME or a small institution? Why the large institution matter is?
Sorry, Mr. Usman. Sorry, we have to interrupt for a while. Okay. Would it be possible you start explaining on this presentation slide again? Yeah. So just to make sure that we capture your visual clearly.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Sorry for that. All right. So in the count of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah. So for CIMB Bank, a couple of key initiatives that's driving the post-pandemic or the pivot of pandemic era is on really driving our customers and enabling our customers further to garner new business domestically and also within the region. And one of the key propositions, as you can see in front of you, is the Halal Biz Ready proposition. Halal Biz Ready is naturally a good fit with MIHAS because it really helps kind of enable Malaysian entrepreneurs, businesses to really export and as well as import the growth of halal goods and services domestically and internationally. So Halal Biz Ready really is a proposition that we've developed on the basis that we want to enable our clients to be halal ready. It literally means getting them ready. A lot of our SMEs today are not aware of how do they be halal ready. And to be halal ready, you need to work with institutions like JAKIM or even Sarunai, third-party agents, to understand the requirements that require one businesses to be halal, and that gives them the certification so that they could really use that halal certification, which is, by the way, very renowned in Malaysia and globally, the Malaysian certificate, as a stamp to go to export markets. So we have a proposition of partners such as JAKIM, Sarunai, even Mars Cargo for that matter, as a halal logistics provider, to help businesses kind of get the thought and the required instrument data, as well as the items that needs to make them kind of halal. But having said that, that's not the role of the bank. So it's about facilitating that. But how do we really, to be halal, you need also capital injection. You need to make certain changes in your food processing line. You need to pay for your training within your own staff. You need to also start paying for license fees, so on and so forth, locally as well as internationally. And that's where CIMB comes in with really having a halal financing product, which of course it can be a term financing or even a cash line, whichever that may be, to help them meet that needs for the purpose of halal. And this is something, if the audience really likes more information on, do visit our booth, and we'll have someone to kind of help you articulate and help you kind of get you more claim to that particular proposition that we have today. But halal is something that is very close to CIMB's heart. The fact that we were the pioneers to start the halal corridor in 2018, and it's been a growth journey, and I only see it growing further given the status of halal and the recognition of the halal authorities within Malaysia. Secondly is to boost our existing SME as well as our mid-corp businesses within the intra-ASEAN corridor. Just like global banks like HSBC, Standard Chartered, Malaysia, CIMB, being a Malaysian bank, has the presence in the ASEAN region and a very strong presence within at least Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, and Thailand. How do we boost that intra-ASEAN trade? How do we enable our existing customers who is exporting and importing to have proper banking relationships with the respective recipient countries across the region? How do we bring their financing cost cheap? And we have special product categories, product solutions that really help with that. It's simply as issuing LC and advising on an LC basis, or a DC in the Islamic financing terminology, is to help that pricing mechanism and connect them. So when you have a bank within the same network, and I think Bilal can attest to this as well, is that it is much faster turnaround time. It is one bank, one solution. And that's where CIMB has a really good value add to add there on the intra-ASEAN corridor. And that is something we need to focus on as a geographical region in order to stay ahead, or rather abreast, in these trying times. Thirdly, would be the CIMB's Green Biz Ready. This sustainability journey that CIMB went through, again, one of the pioneers in the market that started really getting the narratives and the infrastructure ready for the sustainability agenda within Malaysia. And one of the important propositions, and to me, this is one of the most important propositions, is to build resilience as well as continuity within existing businesses, our Green Biz Ready proposition. And why do I use the word resilience? I use the word resilience because, you know, as businesses grow and as the market matures, and by the way, it's going to mature within the next 2 to 3 years, business have literally to be ready to be having sustainable supply chains, sustainable resources, proper disclosure, and take into consideration social impacts when doing their day-to-day businesses. And we have a proposition that enables our own clients. If you're a CIMB client, you can walk into any of our branches or our RMs, or go into the MIHAS booth and ask them what Green Biz Ready is about. Biz Ready really enables you to understand your existing business, and what we do is we provide free consultancy to tell you, for you to be sustainable, you need to do this. And subsequently, we will be able to chart your sustainability journey for you. Whilst you might not see the benefits of it right now, in the long run, this is going to be a key deciding factor when it comes to import and exports within the global space in trade finance. And I think we need to acknowledge that and get on this boat now. But that is on from a business point of view. I think really what the pandemic also taught us was we need to be sustainable. We need to really start caring about the societies that we live in, caring about the planet in which we are living in as well at the same time, and not fall for this overconsumption cycle for quick profits at a lower cost. We need to start really looking at it holistically and really future-proof our businesses for the next generation, and also for the people in which we reside in this planet with. And that's where CIMB comes with the Green Biz proposition. And again, if you really do need more information on this, really happy to kind of run you through it at our booth within MIHAS itself. Another thing I would like to add, and I think this is something that more applicable for the micro business segment, and that is something CIMB again has looked at about a year ago, is launching a micro business financing product, which we do have on shelf today. Of course, micro business also comes with a lot of government support, a lot of NGO support. And what we're really looking at is, and the problem statement here is the larger chunk of micro business entrepreneurs don't know the know-how of really financial governance. They don't know the know-how of the basic requirements, for you to start getting a financing, building a credit score, being able to understand why an audited account is important, being able to understand why their cash flow management is an important factor, opposed to having an individual petty cash that they manage themselves. And that is where CIMB has partnered with. And I think this is a very important factor in terms of building the green shoots in an economy, because you fix the tone at the beginning itself. And we have partnered with Taylor's Education Group to really help us with kind of talking to multiple small entrepreneurs and giving them coaching sessions, enabling them with the right tools to understand their financial well-being. Once they come to a certain level, then CIMB as a bank would also look at these businesses, because they are well versed with us, to help them with a small microfinancing product. And of course, microfinancing, as you know, is up to 50,000 ringgit, but we also do have Penjana scheme, which is a government-led scheme to help these entrepreneurs. So we're having a lot of support there. And I have to mention the regulatory role here in terms of helping us has been fantastic, because it's the realization that we had during the pandemic is that the smaller businesses were the most affected and the most hindered by this pandemic, and therefore a lot of support has been given there. And that's where banks like CIMB, Standard Chartered, and other institutions within the country needs to step in. Lastly, but not least, I also would like to talk about other stuff that CIMB is working on this front, especially in the era of pandemic and going to the endemic era of the COVID-19. The first one is, of course, having said all this, we need to ensure that our delivery as a bank, like Bilal mentioned, has to be digitally received. We are not free to move like we used to 18 months ago. We need to be able to speak to our clients through digital channels. And I think CIMB is being, again, one of the first banks in the market to launch something called a online banking current account, the basic banking requirement. But you can fill all your documentation, come to the branch, just open the account. And that has proven to be one of the strongest tools for CIMB Islamic, because when we started really going out to clients and really selling our products, we realized you need a net bank account to do that. And how do you do that when your branches are shut across the country? You need to ensure that there is online channel, and we are doing that. And inshallah, soon CIMB also will have a completely contactless account opening mechanism for the non-individual base. And as at last month, we are one of the first banks to have a contactless account opening for individual customers today. So really embracing the digital angle. And finally, small business that have with government. I think, again, the government in its regime itself has been really supportive of supporting their own suppliers within ministries, and CIMB is one of the lead banking participants of the Chakna program. Chakna basically enables SMEs and suppliers of goods and services that support certain ministries, where banks like CIMB would come and enable to give them early liquidity for their supply at the given government under the government risk. And that is something we're working. And please do watch out for this space if you are in the audience, anyone on government contractors, because we're going to expand this to more ministries. Right now, it's with Ministry of Education, Higher Education, Multimedia, and Ministry of Health. We're going to move this forward to other ministries in good time. That's in really preliminary discussion right now. And we would have, inshallah, other banks also participating with this at this point in time. So from a CIMB angle, we are working tirelessly to really bring out fit-for-purpose solutions to our clients and to the industry and to the communities which we live in. And we have really realized the importance of being able to be, ESG friendly in whatever we do, and be able to target certain industries, certain clients to really capitalize on certain benefits such as halal and also the green economy. And I really urge you all to please go to the CIMB booth if you need more information, because we are very happy to have that conversation with you and how to help you progress further. Thank you.
Thank you, Usman, for your very comprehensive explanation about the initiative taken by CIMB Islamic to assist its customers. I'm sure there will be plenty additional information that the audience can find from visiting all the booths, not just from the banks, but I would like to take this opportunity to encourage the audience to also look at the support initiative that are offered by Matrade, because Matrade, being the Trade Development Corporation for Malaysia, encourage a lot of SMEs to export your goods and services beyond the Malaysian borders, and therefore these facilities, this support system are there for you. And I hope that you will find some of this useful information throughout the MIHAS, so that it will support and benefit your businesses. Gentlemen, we are actually running out of time, because I would like to also allocate some time for us to be able to address questions from the audience. Before we go to that last round of session, I would like to give this opportunity to Zubair. Zubair, to pick your thoughts further, to round up the discussion so far on contribution of Islamic banking to the global economic activities. Based on your experience promoting halal framework, halal advocacy across different markets, is there any sort of low-hanging fruits that halal SMEs should strive for or target in order to overcome their present challenges? And what would be so-called easy tap, for them to become more resilient to explore the prospects of the international halal trade moving forward, especially in the nearest future. Please, Zubair.
Okay, thank you. When you talk about the halal advocacy, we always talk about to create an enabling environment for halal industry. And whenever we talk about enabling environment, there are different components of enabling environment. Number one and foremost as well is the Islamic finance. We need a fuel to run the Islamic or halal industry. The second is accreditations. A global accreditation, yes. What is the issue right now? That we do not have a global accreditation scheme, and every country have their own standards.
Right.
For example, Malaysia recognized the JACM, Indonesia, Singapore recognized the MIHAS, and others. Similarly, in Arab countries, they have their own standard. For example, by the way, AlHuda Center for Islamic Banking and Economics have a dedicated organization with the name of Halal Research Council, which is involved in halal certification. So being the certification body, we need to take our accreditation from 10, 12 countries to start our business, which is a very difficult task.
Yeah,
so if we have a global standard, if we have a single accreditation scheme, for example, in Islamic finance, we have AOFI, Accounting and Auditing Organization for Islamic Financial Institution. They set up the standard, and that standard is implemented all over the world for Islamic finance industry. But we are missing such type of accreditation scheme. Second, the third is the certification body for enabling environment. Right now, more than 500 halal certifications bodies are working all over the world. Yes. The fourth component of the enabling environment, the educational institute, who may generate very good Sharia scholars, who may generate very good food technologists, agro scientists, and etc. And by the way, in many countries, we have some misconception. In some advanced countries, people consider that halal certification is only dealt by the food technologist.
Yeah.
In some religious countries, they said halal certification is dealt by only by Sharia. By the way, halal certification is a combination of food science and technology and the Sharia. So we have to generate the human resource in the both direction. For example, in Pakistan, in many other countries, we have a very good Sharia scholars, and then we have very good food scientists, agro scientists. What is the gap? The Sharia scholars do not know what is the food science, and food science professionals do not know what is the Sharia. So we need to bridge the gap. Whenever we bridge the gap, then the missing component of the quality human resource of halal industry can be addressed. So we can say, what is the enabling environment? Islamic finance, global accreditation, educational programs, certification bodies, and the standard setting bodies. Inshallah, whenever the organization like MIHAS, organization like JACM, organization like CIMB will sit together and design such type of enabling framework, it will be very easier for the industry to move forward. I would like to discuss one challenge for halal industry, which can be addressed by the Islamic finance industry. Basically, if we see the global size of Islamic finance, which is $2.9 trillion right now, according to the latest statistics, in $2.9 trillion Islamic finance industry, 81% belong to the Islamic banking. About 11% belong to the Sukuk and Islamic capital market. 2% belong to the takaful. About 4 to 5% belong to the dedicated Islamic financial company like Ijara companies, Mudarabas company, and etc. But unfortunately, only 1% belong to the Islamic micro, Islamic agriculture, and Islamic livestock finance. Only 1%. 99% belong to the other segment. So we should increase the size of Islamic microfinance. According to the World Bank report, the largest poverty according to the regions based in the Muslim countries. Why? Because in many Muslim countries, they do not have such financial products which are according to the religious beliefs of the poor. And by the way, for Islamic agriculture finance or Islamic livestock finance, that is the basic thing for the halal industry. When we will grow, then they will go for the value add and the in shape of any production. And similarly, when we increase the Islamic livestock financing for the livestock, then we can have a halal meat. Then we can have a can say the industry related to the milk and buy milk product, the yogurt, and many other products, came from the livestock. So, but the share of Islamic finance in Islamic agriculture finance and Islamic microfinance is the less than 1% of total global Islamic finance industry. And I believe that if we focus to have Islamic agriculture finance, Islamic livestock finance, it will be help out to further grow the halal industry. And at the corporate level, Mr. Bilal mentioned very good things related to the Sukuk in first round. There are different models of Sukuk which is issued by the AOFI that are about 14. Among them, one model is Sukuk Musaka, Sukuk Mujara, Sukuk Mughal, orchard financing, agriculture financing, and the irrigation related to the irrigation. So we should also consider to issue the Sukuk either on the basis of Musaka, Muzara, or Mughalsa. All these three Sukuk belong to the agriculture. So unfortunately, we do not have any evidence that we have a Sukuk on the basis of these three products. So about 90% or 85% Sukuk which have been issued till now are based on Ijara. So we should also think to have some corporate Sukuk for agriculture sector, which will again boost the halal industry. And in the last, AlHuda Center for Islamic Banking and Economics is working from last 16 years. And we are working in Asia, Africa, Europe, and as well as Middle East. And our major products are to set up the Kafir company, to set up the Islamic banks window operation, Islamic banks. And the one of our major product is designing of Islamic microfinance and Islamic agricultural finance product. And we are working with many multilateral organizations around the world. And by the platform of Halal Research Council, which is the subsidiary of AlHuda Center for Islamic Banking and Economics, we have set up different halal certification industries in different countries. In Tanzania, we set up Tanzania halal certification industry. In Nigeria, we set up JAIZ halal certification for the JAIZ Islamic Bank. JAIZ is the first Islamic bank of the full-fledged Islamic bank of the Nigeria. For that bank, we set up halal certification industry, and right now we are trying to have one halal certification industry in Albania in Europe. So we are always available for the development of halal industry along with the Islamic finance industry. Thank you.
Zubair,
Okay.
the first question from the audience is that when we talk about halal industry, there are at least 4 major segments that are widely recognized, mainly food and beverage or food manufacturing, halal tourism, which are pretty much badly affected, especially during this pandemic. A lot of countries close their borders, and therefore halal hotels and halal restaurants are very hugely affected during this pandemic. And halal fashion and cosmetic, yeah, which are quite important, as well as halal pharmaceutical, yeah, especially considering that during this global a lot of vaccines, medications need to be mobilized to reach the population, to defend them, to shield them from the effect of the pandemic. From the question from the audience then is, from your experience and perspective, which are amongst these 4 segments are the most thriving and sustainable during the pandemic, especially in the next 6 to 12 months?
Thank you very much, Madzlan, for the question, which is from the audience. Basically, the sustainability segment among those 4 is the food sector, because even there is a pandemic or non-pandemic, people have to eat.
Sure.
Yes, but during the pandemic, people were very conscious.
Yeah.
They were trying to revolt towards organic-based industry. They start to eat the vegetable. They start to eat some such type of vegetable products as well. Might be in the normal life, those are not normally consumed. And the sector which is badly affected, that is the tourism.
Right.
Either halal tourism or non-halal tourism, all the hospitality industry effective in a very worse level. But the new thing which is emerged during that our pandemic time, that is the technology. Before, in Southeast Asia, nobody was used to utilize app, Uber Food or any other food-related app to bring the food. But during the lockdown, everybody have to utilize those apps.
Sure.
So, yes, we can say that this is opportunity. Unfortunately, this is the opportunity for the technology sector during this pandemic. And I did by along with my team one exercise that what is the major effect of COVID in banking and financial industry. And we took about 20 banks, 20 Islamic banks, and we measured their profitability during 2019 to 2020. The bank who already had a good technological platform, very good applications, and the fintech-based services, those banks got a very tremendous profit as per their previous 5 or 10 years profit. But unfortunately, the bank who didn't have the good technological platform, they were in the loss. And similarly, the food companies who are already utilizing the technological application, they were in a very profitability mode. Even the startup who designed those apps in 2018 or early 2019, they also got a very good reception in the market. Right. So yes, during this pandemic, yes, true. And as per concern about the halal cosmetic and motors fashion, yes, motors fashion a little bit affected, and cosmetic industries also a little bit affected. By the way, why motors fashion and cosmetic was affected? Because our females usually have a makeup at the time when they go to the parties, public gatherings, and etc. And during the pandemic, there's no social gatherings or the weddings or other receptions and etc. So yes, might be the demand of those products like cosmetics and garments are little bit low. Yep.
My question from the audience is that the perception from the market is that the banking sector is the least affected by the economic challenges during the pandemic. But I'm sure you disagree because customers are directly affected during the pandemic, and therefore certainly performance of the banks are directly affected by the lesser viability of their customers. The question then is, how far do you foresee that Islamic banks can play the role of genuine partners to customers, especially the SMEs during this pandemic, especially in terms of overcoming immediate challenges from the credit worthiness perspective?
Fantastic question. So let me first address the first point, banks being affected. In fact, banks are one of the most affected because banks are very much dependent on our customers, and many the economy constricts the chance of our customers or general people who have banking facilities would default. When that defaults, banks literally collapse. And we've seen this in many sort of economic crises previously. So the notion of banks being affected, absolutely be affected. I think, I don't think there's any bank in this country or regionally or globally is not looking to cut costs. We're all cutting down our own costs. We're looking at redeploying our resources more efficiently, pivoting our individual staff, management, and our shareholders to be more digitally centric in an effort to be, again, drive results for our clients and, more importantly, bring more efficiency in the way we do things. So it's been a very frustrating journey for bankers. Not many people know this, but every day it's a really tough uphill battle, unfortunately. It's really how to spur up the economy before we let it spiral, and we can't let it spiral. In terms of the roles of Islamic banks going forward, I've been thinking about this myself personally, in how I want to conduct business, especially with the SME side. And one of the ways that we could look at is alternative scoring. I mean, the brick and mortar of the traditional way of you evaluate a client needs to change. Just like how we are evolving individually, institutionally, regulatory, through other alternate measures, but it may be digital, maybe through other ways of interaction. We need to also start looking at evaluating our clients differently, pivot with that change as well. I think that is one way we can look at it, where you can have different scorecards to look at how SMEs are willing to pay, or rather the propensity of SMEs willing to pay, right? And I'll give you a good example today. Today, let's have an individual who has a mortgage, a credit card, and a personal finance. When the economy hits hard, what's the first thing they're going to pay? Their mortgage, because that's the roof over their heads. I think that's the propensity to pay model, and what determines a business to pay and propensity to pay. Having said that, I think you raised a very good point on partnership. Just because I have an alternate scoring methodology doesn't mean that I can use this methodology to give. And how do banks really enable businesses? I think we always forget that banks are a service industry at the end of the day, and we need to be enablers as opposed to just financiers or disablers, I would call it sometimes. And here, I think it's a very important point that banks like CIMB has embarked on an alliance called the Trade Club Alliance, where we have about 14 partnership banking groups, where we say, if you are a member of the Trade Club Alliance, which CIMB Islamic provides free for any company who's interested to sign up. And again, if the audience needs more information on this, please do go to our booth. We will sign you up as a Trade Club member under CIMB without any hassle. Because what it really does is it really says banks as a partner, we partner with other banks, importers and exporters of other banks, whether it's ASEAN, Middle East, China, Europe, Africa, to say, if there is a potential buyer or a supplier, we will connect them to you through the Trade Club platform. Whilst we may not be a large global bank, we do have a consortium of banks that are working with us to do this, and there's been a lot of test cases that's proven successful. And that is a great example of partnerships and really enabling customers. Enabling customers doesn't mean just giving finance, it's really etching them new paths to grow their business. And I think CIMB Islamic has done that, and we are doing that. And please, I will urge you, just please go to our booth and ask them about the Trade Club Alliance, and you will see the wonders of it. It really does business matching to help you look at export or import opportunities. And that's the role of bank play. And I think Islamic banks inherently through its value system needs to do that. and are doing that. And I really look forward to seeing more banks doing that in time to come.
Thank you very much, Usman. To be fair to all banks, I wear my hat as a customer. I actually always try to think that I should give the opportunity to my banks to be a partner to my business. And therefore, I usually keep a very open and transparent communication with my banks. It is not uncommon for me personally to write into my banks to request for certain facilitation and assistance. I think it is an opportune time for us to encourage all customers, all SMEs to therefore utilize their communication channels, feedbacks, forms to basically highlight to the banks on how best the bank can also support and facilitate your sustainability. And I think the reciprocal synergistic relationship between customers and banks is very important and pertinent for both of us to come up from this pandemic in good terms. The next question from the audience related to a comparison of insights between Malaysia, Southeast Asia region and the Middle East. Therefore, I would like to pose this question to Mr. Bilal Parvaiz from Stanchart Saadiq to answer. The question is, Mr. Bilal, it has always been perception among many in Malaysia and Southeast Asia that the Middle East economies continue to survive and thrive mainly because of the oil and gas sector. Whenever the oil price remains high, then these economies do not need to do anything else for them to be sustainable. Unfortunately, for regions like Malaysia and Southeast Asia, we don't have that privilege of oil gold, so to speak. So what would be your perspective on how countries like Malaysia and others in Southeast Asia region can continue to overcome their lack of resources during this pandemic to ensure that their economies are sustainable?
Thank you, Inchik Madzlan. So, okay. So first of all, I would not entirely agree that the GCC or the Middle East is entirely, dependent on oil. So yes, oil is a substantial contribution of the GDP, but there are other factors. There is tourism, there is a service industry, there are other enterprises over there which are contributing to the overall GDP and the overall economic growth of the Middle East. And I also would probably kind of defer to the direct comparison drawn between Southeast Asia and GCC, because if you look at the entire world, every part of the world has different resources and different features, etc. So it would be probably comparing apples to oranges, etc. So if you want to go into that detail. Now, coming back to Southeast Asia and specifically Malaysia, I think ASEAN specifically has tremendous opportunities in terms of growth, and there are abundant natural resources in terms of we have oil over here, we have plantations, palm oil, so there are some of the resources which are in abundant supply, and also the rising young population, and also the adaptation to this, the openness to adapt to digitization and these platforms. So we have, now we keep seeing new innovations come into play, and a lot of that is emerging in pockets. If you look at Singapore, if you look at Malaysia, if you look at now Indonesia has embarked onto some initiatives, especially on the microfinance on digital platforms, enabling the access to financing to the rural areas. So there are specific needs of every region, and then there are specific opportunities which the players need to go and help out, right? If you look at Malaysia, I think from a Malaysia perspective, starting with Islamic finance, moving on to the sukuk market, and then to the halal ecosystem, I think all these three are are sort of gold standards in the entire world. So that's where Malaysia stands today. Anyone talks about these areas, Malaysia is taken as a benchmark. And now look at even MIHAS, right? So MIHAS, I mean, halal is something which is there across the world, right? So it has a halal demand is there in Middle East, it's there in South Asia, it's there in other parts of the world. But who has sort of taken the, I mean, where is the world's largest halal exhibition taking place? Right here in Malaysia, right? So these are some of the things that you would say that, oh, other markets are saying that Malaysia has done them very well. So probably they have the right resources. Either it is human capital, or is it realizing the opportunity and then moving towards it? Because that's what it takes to be the differentiator, is to realize that yes, you have the opportunity, and how you approach it and how you adopt and move on to it in no time. If you take too much of time, then obviously there's someone else who's going to take on that. So those are my views, and I think, I mean, if you would probably ask an economist, he would go into more detail into it. But from a banker's perspective, that's how I see it.
Thank you, Bilal.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, Zubair, Usman, and Bilal, it has been a privilege speaking to all the three of you on this topic of Islamic finance for global solutions. I have enjoyed it very much, especially for your insightful and comprehensive sharing of experience and information from the various sectors, from the various geographical experience for the benefit of MIHAS audience. I hope the audience similarly enjoy this session as much as I did. I hope to be able to meet all of you again, probably face to face, inshallah, in another opportunity. In the meantime, I would like to also thank the organizer for having us, and encourage all the audience to please visit all the booths available during MIHAS, especially the booths by Madrid and by the banks and other SMEs as well, for you to hopefully gain more insights, more useful information on what are happening in the international halal segment around the world. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Madzlan Hussain. I am senior partner at the Chambers of Shamsul Kamar, a local firm in Malaysia. It has been a privilege to moderate this session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for attending the session. We hope you have found it interesting. We are taking a short break now, but please come back for our next session on Islamic IP and business sustainability at 12:45. If you have further questions for the speakers, do visit them at their virtual booths for further information and discussion. In the meantime, we'd like to remind you that the MIHAS virtual platform is open day and night for you to visit at any time convenient to you. We hope you will take the time to browse and visit the many attractive exhibitors, virtual booths and programs.